Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Coach Prime, the Colorado Buffaloes landing their second commitment of the transfer portal window. This one's a big one. Former Alabama defensive lineman Jehiem Oatis, the number one defensive lineman currently in the transfer portal, committing to Colorado. Where you want to start with Jehiem Oatis is he brings something to the table that just not a lot of other players can. When you're talking about 6'5", 320, with the athleticism and the explosiveness that Jehiem Oatis has, there's just not many other players that can offer the raw physical traits that Jehiem Oatis brings to the table. And I think what's most exciting for Coach Prime is how can we maximize this kid? And I think more importantly, how can we find that consistency with Jehiem Oatis? If there's one knock on Jehiem Oatis, you've seen some really, really special stuff from him. You've also seen some not so good stuff. Can we find that consistent good football from Jehiem Oatis? Because if you can find that, this kid can be one of the best defensive linemen that you see in the country. Make no mistake about it. There was a reason that every single Power 4 program in the country was lining up to go grab Jehiem Oatis, because what he brings, not a lot of other players bring. And can he be maximized in Boulder, Colorado? That's the story we're going to talk about. This kid's fascinating because you go back to him coming out of high school. He was 6'4", he was 370. He was just this massive, physically imposing specimen on the inside of the defensive line. Had to drop a little weight, had to become a little bit more athletic and quicker. He did that during his time at Alabama. And again, when you see his best football, if you were to just cut up his 20 best plays, you would be looking at him and saying that that's a first-round NFL draft pick. How can we get those 20 best plays more consistent every single Saturday? That's the story for him. I am fired up to see what he can do in Boulder, Colorado. I want to get into really a couple of different talking points. One, Jehiem Oatis, and talk about him. But I think more importantly, kind of talk about where Colorado is going in the transfer portal, including what they might do at the quarterback spot. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Colorado fans, we talked Carter Miller last night. The amount of support y'all continue to show as we break down these commitments, it's been a blast for the boys to talk about. The amount of support y'all continue to show, it means the world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Jehiem Oatis. And I want to start with the trend that we've been talking about for the last 12 months. I don't necessarily know if people across the country really realize it. That is, the quality of line of scrimmage player that Colorado has brought in the transfer portal over the last 12 months, going back to last year's cycle. It's different. Coach Prime's first year in 2023, it was clear that they just didn't have a high-level Power 4 line of scrimmage play on either side of the football. And it got significantly better. I mean, we're talking about guys like Chidozie. We're talking about guys like BJ Green, who was an all-conference Pac-12 guy before he came to Colorado. The quality of line of scrimmage player that Colorado is now starting to bring into the portal, or bring in from the portal, I should say, it's a little different. And Jehiem Oatis, he kind of follows that mold. I mean, this is a guy that a lot of SEC programs were going after, a lot of teams across the country were going after. He winds up in Boulder, Colorado. We kind of know that Colorado is going to attract some skilled players, right? Because of all the success they've had with skilled players over the first 2 years that Coach Prime has been there. Now you see the success a guy like Chidozie had, or the success a guy like BJ Green had, or a success a guy like a left tackle, true freshman Jordan Seaton had during his first year of college football in Colorado. You're starting to see these line of scrimmage players start coming to Boulder, Colorado. And that's kind of the difference. I think what's the biggest difference between 2023 and 2024? Why did this team get so much better in one offseason? To me, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, they were dudes in 2023. Nothing changed from their end. I mean, they probably got better, but nothing really changed there. The big story was Colorado just got better along the line of scrimmage. Pass protection was better. The pass rush was better from the defensive line. They started stopping the run better. That's the difference between the version of Colorado we saw in 2023 and the version we saw in 2024 and the version that we're going to see in 2025. Finally getting that depth and talent along the line of scrimmage in Jehiem Oatis, he brings that. And again, I think the story is one. What I love about Jehiem Oatis is he can do two things for you. One, he can do the dirty work, the stuff that Chidozie did, like the fire high. Hey, we're gonna eat up double teams. We're going to be really disruptive on the inside of the defensive line. But Jehiem Oatis, for how big he is, an explosive first step, can get after the passer at a high level. There's a lot of different things and a lot of different ways Jehiem Oatis can impact this Colorado defense. And again, at the end of the day, just God don't make many guys who are built like Jehiem Oatis. Now, I think an equally intriguing conversation is what Colorado decides to do at the quarterback position. This is something we've talked a lot about. Many of y'all know I'm a Michigan fan. We have Bryce Underwood coming in. Colorado, Michigan, a very similar kind of spots they're in at the quarterback spot. You got a really talented true freshman coming in Julian Lewis. Not necessarily a ton of other quarterbacks on this roster that you trust a ton. So does Colorado go and try to get a veteran quarterback that can come in and compete with Julian Lewis and maybe kind of bridge that gap until Julian is ready to take over this offense? My take is you probably do want to bring in a veteran quarterback. And it sounds like Colorado agrees because they're bringing in Caden Salter for a visit. I'm a really big fan of Caden Salter. Now, when you get into Caden Salter, if you go back to 2023, there was a really good chance this kid just went to the NFL draft after 2023. And the numbers he put up, a 60% completion percentage, that won't jump off the paper to you. With an average depth of target of 13.6 yards down the field, Caden Salter in 2023 was pushing the ball down the field, still completing 61% of his passes. The arm talent, the verticality that he brings to this Colorado offense, it's special. And this is a guy that 47% completion percentage, 20 plus yards down the field, 32 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. In 2023, when he was surrounded by difference makers, this was one of the more dynamic quarterbacks that you saw in the country. Not to mention he ran for 1,100 yards, had 57 missed tackles forced, a legitimate dual threat guy at the quarterback spot. To me, it makes sense because you bring in Julian Lewis and Caden Salter and say, whoever wins that job, you know they're going to be pretty dang good. I would maybe say Caden Salter would win it coming out of camp, and it gives Julian Lewis some time to acclimate to the collegiate level, and you learn behind a guy in Caden Salter who's played a lot of football. And if Julian Lewis, who I think is very ready to be a starting quarterback, and the thing with Julian Lewis, why I believe he's a potential day one, year one guy, he's played a ton of football. Even though he reclassified from 2026 to 2025, this is a guy that has played and produced at a high level of high school football down there in Georgia, has had a ton of experience under his belt. I think he's a day one ready guy, but kind of the thought process for Coach Prime is that, hey, we're going to bring in as many good players as we can. You know, have that competitive depth all over this roster, including the quarterback position, and let the cream rise to the top. You know, you battle it out, Julian Lewis, Caden Salter, iron sharpens iron. Chances are you're going to get damn good quarterback play in 2025 if you have a quarterback room that consists of Caden Salter and Julian Lewis. I would be a fan to see Caden Salter wind up in Boulder. I think it'd be good for this Colorado program. I think it certainly would be good for Julian Lewis, and it allows Colorado to not throw Julian Lewis into the fire if he's not ready. And if Julian Lewis wins the job and beats out a guy like Caden Salter, who's been very good at the college football level, then, hey, Julian Lewis is ready. And he's probably going to win you a lot of games in 2025. That's my take on it. A lot of commitments to break down for Colorado over the next couple of weeks. We'll continue to break them down. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.